Welcome to the Dan Casper Show podcast, your chance to catch the full show anytime, anywhere. If you missed it live on the radio, no worries. We've got you covered with all the sports talk, opinions, interviews, and conversations from the show. From the Packers to the Brewers to the biggest stories in sports and around Wisconsin, it's all right here. This is the Dan Casper Show podcast. Friday morning, TGIF. Thanks for hanging out with us. No matter how you're listening to us, whether it's on the radio dials, 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also available to stream up online at sportstalk1051.com. You got the video stream up and rolling here, too. You can join in on Section 105 chat room. Hit us up with the text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. We'll get back to some more Christian Watson talk. We got more Brewers talk as we get set for this 3-game series going up against the Colorado Rockies. Jacob Mizorowski's going to get to start tomorrow. That should be fun to watch him in that altitude and that. So send me some of your pump the brakes, full throttle questions, since I'm riding solo here. I know we got a couple already on that texting line, so big thanks. We'll get to that coming up probably in the next hour. Our top 250 countdown will also continue here in just a little bit. Let's bring him on board, though. We've got Dr. Austin Crow joining us here this morning for a little Inside the Training Room. Austin, can you hear me okay? Let's try this again. Where is he at, Austin? Where did he go? Oh, man. Are we not having... Oh, man. Oh. Austin, you there now? What the heck? This was working a little bit earlier. Man, well, we'll try it again here. So, see, this worked when I had it with Brandon. It must be something a little bit different here, but we'll try this again here in just a second. So, all right, let's try again. Austin, you there, big guy?
I'm here.
I got you, dude. How you doing, man?
Perfect. We're rocking and rolling.
Rocking and rolling, dude. So, yeah, I don't know, I think Brandon was lying to me when we tested it with him, so we'll blame him. But anyways,
very untrustworthy.
Exactly right. Can't trust those Chippewa Falls people. So
very shady.
Hey, let's start off because I've had a lot of people want to reach out and talk some Micah Parsons with you, Austin, and he recently said the other day with his ACL recovery that the Packers have a hard 9-month timeline. Like, you cannot return before 9 months from an ACL surgery. He mentioned that there's statistics, there's numbers that kind of go into it. Is there any truth to that from your experience with ACL injuries?
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of data on that. I mean, there was a historic push, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 years ago to see if we could accelerate the rehab of ACLs. And that failed miserably. So we were trying to get athletes back at like 3 months, before 6 months. And the data is very clear. Those early returners, occasionally they do okay. So, you'll run across an athlete that, well, it only took me 3-4 months to get back and I went back playing. The re-tear rate is incredibly high at that time point. So what I counsel my patients on, the data is very clear. Anything before 6 months is absolutely just foolish. Between month 6 and month 9, there's still a decrease in the re-rupture rate, but we can sometimes make kind of individualistic decisions where it's like, look, your leg looks like it's recovered better. And there's a discussion we had, but there's evidence that says 9 months. In fact, in some patients who have persistent weakness, it can be up to a year from an isolated ACL injury. So, yeah, it is definitely not a snap your fingers in your back kind of injury and surgery and recovery. It is a long haul. So that makes it challenging, especially when we're dealing with athletes, because generally they get injured in season, right? So if they're coming back at a year, 9 months even, I mean, it's going to wrap through that whole off season into usually the beginning of that other season. And now if you add, a high school athlete to it, that means they're going to miss multiple sports along the way. So it's a tough discussion to have because kids want to get back and they want to play. And now you throw into the mix that, professional athlete, and that's their livelihood, and they want to get back out there. So, I'd read his discussion because I think he'd made some either, comments to people about maybe he'd be back sooner. And I think he's coming to realize that it's probably the smart thing to do to give it the full time to heal and heal correctly and get back and participate when the leg is ready, not when they want to.
So I think, we've mentioned this guy a lot, and it's Adrian Peterson and his insane recovery and such. I guess my question for you then would be, okay, so say what is it that you look for to kind of clear an athlete to return from the field? And, with Adrian Peterson's quick return, what was it, do you think, that allowed the Vikings or made the Vikings comfortable in saying, yep, you're cleared to return this quick?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different factors that come into play. Some of them are subjective, some are objective. So, as far as objective findings, we want to assess the graph. So when we assess the patient in clinic, we basically do what's called a Lockman, an anterior joint, or pivot shift test. So 3 tests that we can do to assess the stability of the ACL. Those have to be good. If they're not good, then you've at that point you've already had some kind of re-injury to the graft. So that's like the bare minimum. You want to make sure they have good quad strength and range of motion. Now, range of motion you can assess bilaterally, so you'll see what the other knee can do compared to that. 'Cause everyone's range of motion is slightly different, but that gives you an idea. Now, quad strength is a challenging one. Every single ACL in the history of the world that's had a reconstruction, their quad will atrophy. And it can be very pronounced. Like the first 3 to 4 months after surgery, I mean, it doesn't matter how big and muscular the athlete was, they'll look like they have a bird leg. It's pretty crazy. And they slowly build it back up. Now, the visual, how the leg looks and how the quad looks, there's a correlation, but it's not exact. So sometimes these kids will be getting a lot of strength back in the leg and the muscle may not necessarily look it. But that's some of the objective stuff we can do. So there's different tests that they can do with physical therapy to look at side-to-side strength and endurance, and that's one marker. There have been some studies that point at this 80% rule where they have to have at least 80% strength in the contralateral leg. That hasn't borne out really, really well in the data, but that's kind of a rule of thumb that we want to see the leg at 80% strength or the other one at minimum. Other things that are, again, more subjective, the athlete has to have, faith in the knee. They need to trust it. And I can go out there and run and jump and cut and pivot. An interesting statistic is this. If you tear your ACL, so let's say, for example, left knee. So if an athlete tears their left knee, we reconstruct it. They're 2 times more likely to tear the ACL on the right knee than to re-tear the one on the left knee. So, and it's a kind of a confusing statistic. You're like, wait a minute, that's my good knee, right? And I think there's a couple factors that play. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that they don't get back and fully trust that leg, so they're going to put themselves in an awkward position, and then they're going to overload that right side and then tear that one. So it's something that we always talk to them about. Is like, look, you have to feel comfortable and have again, trust in what the knee can do and perform. So those are all things, and that's kind of a big salad, right? There's a lot of moving parts in that, but. And then one of them, I guess, to say that is very objective is time, like what we're talking about right now. I mean, it really 6 months is the absolute bare minimum. Often I try to get them close to between that, 6 and 9 months, depending on what the season looks like. But we make modifications based on the athlete and where they're at. And so it is, again, individualized every time, but those are kind of some rough things that we look at.
I know this would probably be really speculative and such, but let's say Adrian was on the Packers. Do you think he returns that quick if the Packers have that 9-month minimum?
Yeah, I mean, I think the treating surgeon is going to be the one who makes the ultimate decision for the most part. It always should be some level of shared decision making, though. I mean, I don't sit there and ever tell a patient you have to do one thing or the other. It's always a discussion. But I mean, there is growing evidence that we should be getting closer to that, between that 6 and 9 month mark. And so as you get closer to that 9 month mark, the rates do drop down a little bit. And so some people are saying, look, that whatever 5%, 10% decrease in re-tear rates is worth waiting those extra couple months. And again, it depends on what the leg went through. He did disclose that he had some meniscal work as well. Mm-hmm. Different meniscal tears have different recovery timelines as well. That could be a factor. So, I mean, hard to say for sure to answer that question explicitly, but I would say, there are times where we're telling an athlete, I know you want to come back. It is not a good idea to come back. So there are times where we're pulling the reins back, and that certainly may have been the case.
You mentioned the meniscal one, and yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. I guess, how is that kind of common with ACL injuries, that there may be some meniscal damage to that knee too?
Oh, yeah, very, very common. I'd say well over 50, 60% of the time at least, there's meniscal injury. And there's, a meniscus tear, we use that term like it's one thing. It's not. I mean, you have a medial meniscus and a lateral meniscus. They both act differently. They both have different functions in the knee, as far as stability and kind of how they protect the knee. And then tear patterns, whole bunch of different tear patterns as well. Some you just have to trim out. And that can be, in the short term, better because it's like, oh, they can walk right away or, more quickly at least. But for the long-term function and stability of the knee, losing meniscus tissue is not a good thing. And then to take it a step further, there are tear patterns that we can repair. And those are not all the same. So it's really a mixed bag. So, for example, like a root tear, we have to kind of basically sew and pull the meniscus back down to the bone. Those have a much longer recovery rate. Now, those are much less common. We don't see those nearly as often, but they do happen. You can have radial tears. You can stitch those together. They don't heal quite as well, or at least quite as quickly. Again, a little bit slower recovery. The standard peripheral tear, that's kind of like a longitudinal split, those tend to heal pretty well. But even those, you're going to have a little bit longer time on crutches, which in turn means you can't start strengthening the leg for a little bit longer duration, and that kind of sets them back as well. So there's a lot of factors. And then, of course, we've talked about this at length in the past, the cartilage, right? So any kind of cartilage damage, I mean, that is really an X factor that not only changes the short term, but certainly the long-term prognosis as well. So when we get into a knee and we see a large defect in the cartilage, it's just, I mean, it's not the kiss of death because there are things that we can do, but it is absolutely suboptimal. I mean, we know that it's going to be a much tougher recovery. We have to do additional procedures. And then the risk of arthritis for that young athlete is much, much higher. They'll start developing changes sometimes in their 30s and 40s already. So you never like to see that, but it is what it is. That's the nature of the beast. You have to address it. And then you start talking about doing procedures that, you're not necessarily always just trying to get back to sports. You're trying to protect the knee for the long term. So those are things. And then I guess one other factor would be other ligament injuries as well. So in addition to ACL, you can injure the MCL, the LCL, the PCL. Those are much less common, but it's not rare to have a collateral ligament injury with the ACL. So ACL with an MCL or ACL with a posterolateral corner injury. So we do see those, and those, again, can either be operative or non-operative, and those all play a role. So definitely a complex topic for sure, but, and that really kind of speaks to the fact that it's hard to put these in a box where it's like, oh, yeah, ACL, you get back at, month 6 or month 9. I mean, there's so many things that come into play in how we treat them, what they're getting back to, what sport, within the sport, what position. So a lot of moving parts.
I had seen some people kind of talking about his knee injury with the meniscus specifically and trying to compare to Malik Neighbors. Now, Parsons, from my understanding, was, I think I read a trim of the meniscus, and Malik Neighbors was a little bit more extensive. Can you maybe explain the two, like the different differences between the two?
Yeah. So if there's a smaller tear or sometimes even a bigger one that's not a repairable pattern, then we remove it. That's called a meniscectomy. Sometimes we'll use the term trim out or clean up. We're removing the tissue, so it is just removed. As you might imagine, if it's removed, you don't really need to protect it because it's been removed. Now, we don't remove the whole thing, just to be clear. We only remove the part that's torn, but the meniscus, it basically is a little kind of C-shaped fibrocartilage piece that sits between the femur and the tibia. So it has two main purposes. One of them is a shock absorber, so it literally sits between the two bones and absorbs some shock, but it also is a secondary stabilizer of the knee, so it plays a role in stability, which, of course, whenever you have an ACL injury, that plays a big role in it. So those stabilizers are important. So if you're just trimming it out, now you have a defect in that, so it doesn't function as well. It's not a light switch where it's like you trim a little bit out and it doesn't work, but of course it's a gradient. So if you trim a little bit, it only affects a little bit. If you have to trim a lot, it can have a big effect on both that shock absorber function and the stability. Now, the nice thing about repairing is if you get the repair to heal correctly, which it usually does, you restore normal meniscus function. And so there have been a number of studies that show after an ACL tear, ironically, it's not so much the ACL reconstruction. The two big variables are, was there a cartilage injury, and did you have to cut out any meniscus? Because if you repair it, a repaired meniscus functions like a normal meniscus. So then you'll say, all right, yeah, repair sounds great, and it is. The problem is that we have to protect that longer. So they're going to be on crutches generally for at least 6 weeks, whereas an isolated ACL or with a trim out, you often get off crutches at a little bit shorter timeline. So, a lot of people are like, geez, I hope I don't have to have the repair. True, because you'll be on crutches longer, but in the health of the knee and stability to long term, it is much better to repair if you can.
I want to go over to baseball here, and this was a piece that The Athletic actually just dropped yesterday, and it was about some MLB organizations are more injury-prone than others. Is that a bad luck or a system issue? And I won't go through the whole piece here, but just to kind of sum it up, what they found was, and I'll just read a little bit here, you can sort publicly available lists of injuries any way you want, and The Athletic did, coming up with nearly a dozen different combinations, and the same three teams stay at or near the top of the list of organizations with the most injuries: Yankees, Mets, and Baltimore Orioles. So, and they asked the question, why do the most injured organizations tend to stay that way? And they kind of go through all these numbers and statistics. But I guess what I want to ask you is when you see something like that where they do like 12 different, types of scenarios, but there's a common theme of three teams, do you tend to think that maybe that's still bad luck, or is there a deeper root and you want to try to investigate that from your position?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think, first off, I didn't read the full article, so it's hard for me to comment completely on it. But I would say the concept, there could be correlation, there could be causation. So, I mean, is it because those are three good baseball teams that, have playoff runs? Although I guess maybe the Mets and Orioles haven't, but the Yankees certainly do. But maybe they play more baseball. Maybe they push their pitchers harder. Maybe they throw more innings. And so it could be like a coaching style where it's like, look, we're not afraid to leave our starters in a little bit longer. We're not afraid to have our guys throw into the hundreds for, longer durations of time. That's going to put more stress on the shoulder elbow. Those are certainly possibilities. It could be their approach to off-season training where it's like, look, we're not going to give as much rest, or we're not going to focus as much on strengthening and flexibility. We're going to focus more on strengthening. So those are possibilities that it's actually something going on. But there's also going to be confounding variables. So maybe there are guys there, over the last handful of years that have had injuries and are recurrent, and they pop up, 5 times, and that really triggers a higher number. It's hard to say for sure. I can tell you these teams are not flippant, and I can tell you that doctors taking care of these teams. I mean, in fact, the Yankees and Mets, I think, have the same team doctors. It's HSS, I think. Definitely the Mets, but I think they're the Yankees docs as well. So, I mean, those hospitals that take care of them, I mean, they're world-renowned shoulder and elbow surgeons. So they're getting top-notch care, that's for sure. So, I mean, do I think that there's something really detrimental going on where they're just ignoring stuff or putting people in bad places? Probably not. So, hard to say for sure. I mean, I think again, could it be, multiple factors at play? I would say it's more likely to be that than it is one specific thing where you can say, all right, this organization's doing something wrong and that's resulting in these problems. But I bet you that article will raise some eyebrows, and I bet you those teams will look at it because, I mean, each athlete when they're injured, I mean, if you think about what they're investing in the team, in what they're putting in those players, I mean, the dollar bills are just staggering, and so they do not want to see a single missed game. So they're going to do everything they can to prevent injuries, or if they do see them, treat them and get them back as safely as possible. So I'm sure there'll be some work on their end to try to figure that out too.
Yeah, and there's an interesting portion in here too, talking about youth and high school Tommy John surgeries, and it says, and this is a percentage of overall UCL surgeries at Andrews Sports Medicine and Orthopedics Center that were performed on youth and high school pitchers, and talks about the rise of Tommy John surgeries. And one scout noted, and this is kind of a crazy quote, but kind of called it a ticking time bomb for some of these younger pitchers kind of coming out, because the probability of them possibly going under a Tommy John surgery at some point. Oh, let's try this again. So let's get Dr. Crow back on here too. So, but yeah, it's a really interesting piece. Hey, Austin.
Gotcha. Sorry, I lost you for a second.
No, you're good. So, no, I was just because there was Tommy John surgery for high school and youth athletes, and talking about the rise and kind of talking about Andrews Sports Medicine. And a scout said, some of these guys coming through the draft now, he labels them like ticking time bombs at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the Andrews Institute was founded by James Andrews. So he's a big name in orthopedics, and he made his mark predominantly with shoulder and elbow injuries. And so he has done a ton of research on Tommy John or UCLs. Now he's not the one who came up with the procedure. That was Curl and Joe out in LA, the Curl and Joe clinic. But, Andrews really, so in fact, it's like pitching counts and all of that data came from the Andrews Institute. So they were the big ones that pushed behind that. So there's a huge correlation with the number of pitches and the velocity that these kids are throwing at. The crazy part is we run into people all the time that are trying to circumvent those. And so you talk to family and you're saying, look, you're whatever, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, these young kids, you need to watch their pitch counts. You do not want them throwing hard this many pitches. And they'll sometimes be on two different teams or playing in different leagues. And so they're not violating the rules, quote unquote, because that league, they can't pitch more than 100 pitches in a week or a game, and then a set number in a week. But they'll be in two different leagues. And so then they can kind of double up their numbers. And I mean, there absolutely is an epidemic of UCL injuries. Now, it's not always the fault of like the kid or the family. Sometimes they just happen. But when we see these big changes and shifts in numbers, you start saying something is going on. And it's clear these young kids are throwing more and they're throwing harder. And that's putting stress on the UCL and these young kids. And so I do think there's also an element where it's like, look, if we deal with this problem, we can try to fight through it for month after month after month. Maybe years even, or we can do this surgery and try to stabilize the elbow. The advent of the UCL repair, I think, has pushed that envelope a little bit where we can get faster recovery. And some people are like, let's just throw the anchors in and see if we can get this thing to heal. So, I can see even in this part of the country, I would say I've seen an uptick in my Tommy John practice in the last year or two as well. Now we don't have that same level of year-round baseball that they do in the South. And so down there, so I did my fellowship at Virginia and they play baseball year-round there. We did a lot of Tommy Johns on young kids. So, it's something they're looking at. And I think the biggest thing, like I said, is that, the athlete and the family have to understand like those pitch counts and things are there for real. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing is excessive hard throwing. And that's the biggest factor.
One more quote I wanted to get to throw your way and get your reaction before I let you go. It said that teams listening to players is critically important and teams whiff on that, said an NL executive. Part of the rehab process is always what players are experiencing, and I think teams discount it heavily relative to what they see on scans when it comes to long-term rehabs. They often prioritize scans over symptoms along the way.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's like an age-old question in our field is like, we get an MRI, it shows us what's going on, and the patient's telling you something. I've always been in the camp, listen to the patient over the image, because, what they're experiencing trumps everything. So there are times where we think things look pretty good and they're not, and vice versa. Sometimes you look at an MRI and you're like, ooh, that doesn't look so hot. And they're like, no, I feel great. So it can go both ways. But it is absolutely imperative. When we were talking a little bit ago about ACLs and you'd ask me kind of the criteria, I mentioned that term, the patient has to have trust or faith in their knee. The same thing is with an elbow or shoulder injury in a pitcher. They have to say, look, I feel good. I'm throwing good. It feels like I can throw hard. Sometimes you'll hear them complain of pain. That's obviously a huge red flag. Sometimes you hear them talk about stiffness. That's a little bit more challenging because that can be normal in the recovery. But there's more subtle things where the pitcher's like, I just don't have that same velocity or control that I had before. That can also be part of the normal recovery process. But sometimes you see that in the elbow that's in trouble because one of the common complaints on people who have injuries to, let's say, the shoulder or elbow, they don't necessarily come in and say, I have a shoulder problem. They come in and say, I've lost 5 miles an hour off my pitch and I can't control the same way I used to. And that can be the beginning of a problem that we see in, let's say, the superior labrum thrower or the Tommy John ligament in the elbow. And so it's important to listen to the athlete. Now, obviously, I have a very different practice than if I was the New York Yankees team doctor. The team doctor should, of course, be prioritizing the athlete, but there is an element of like, hey, we're a team and we want to, go to the playoffs and we're in a playoff run right now. We need our pitcher back. And you could certainly have that bias. I'm not accusing him of that, just to be clear, but that is there where you're like, well, do we try to push this a little bit? Like, oh, you're a little stiff. That's okay. Push through that a little bit. That can be okay, but it may not. So I'm sure there's an element of that. And it can work both ways, because sometimes the athlete will say, look, I feel good and I want to push through whatever may be going on. And so sometimes you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt as well. So, but on the big picture, it is absolutely critical to take the patient or the athlete's complaints and what they're feeling into account as you're looking at the rehab of any injury, because that is just critical to decision-making along the way.
Oh, man, I know I kept you along this morning, but this was a fun convo, and I think we could probably do it for another hour. A lot of stuff to dive into and such. So, hey, man, I appreciate the time, and have a fantastic weekend, buddy, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
You got it. Dr. Austin Crowe, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Just an awesome conversation there. And I think the Tommy John and the kids and the elbow pitching, I mean, that's a conversation that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon. But, man, big thanks again to Dr. Crowe for that conversation. All right, we got to take a quick break. I know we're a little behind, but we'll be right back after these quick words. Whether it's like the main key flight ones or whatever the case, you'll be surprised when you stop in there and you see all of the different flavors and selections. So go visit. I think I'm going to go there today, actually, this afternoon, and load up, and because I want to do a little grilling out this weekend. So, but yeah, go check it out. Mike Star Market, west side of Eau Claire. I know I got to take another break coming up here in just a sec, because we went a little long with Dr. Crowe, but I hope I hope everybody enjoys those conversations with Austin. And I know I got a couple of texts already giving some praise to Dr. Crowe. But I always feel like we learn a lot talking with Dr. Crowe here. So hopefully everybody enjoys that too. We got Brewers versus Rockies coming up tonight. Brewers Rockies, taking a look at this series. Kind of looking at, I know we're, Saturday's game with Missouri. By the way, Joe, are you watching the whole series? You just watching tonight? So Joe's on our video stream, and he's actually in Denver right now. Going to be watching, I believe, tonight's game, but are you also going to be watching a tomorrow night's game, or how many games are you? I'm kind of curious on that, but because I think we're all like, oh, Mizorowski and those elements, and that could be kind of good there. But Brandon Sproat's on the mound here tonight, and I think tonight is a big night for Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat's coming off of a game where his manager, Pat Murphy, wasn't too pleased with his performance. He hasn't lost confidence in him, but if we revisit some of the comments that he threw out there, he wasn't happy, calling it duds and that. So I think tonight is a really big-time night for Brandon Sproat. And even if he, not to be like a Debbie Downer or anything like this, but even if he goes out there tonight and has himself a really good game, he's got to stack these performances. He's got to go out there and have consistently good performances. Otherwise, now you kind of look at some of the injuries in the bullpen, and you're like, oh, maybe a move to the bullpen is on the horizon here for Brandon Sproat. But I think tonight is a big one. Coming off that Houston game where he went 4 1/3, 6 hits, 5 earned runs. The day before, or the game before, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 walks against the Dodgers. Cubs, 4 2/3, 3 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks. So this is, dare we say, shut up time? I don't know, but you break it down. He finished the month of May in 5 games started, 1-2 with a 5.64 ERA. The longest he went into a game in the month of May was 5 1/3. It was a May 12th game against the Padres. He did pick up the win, and that was a game he also gave up 3 earned runs. The game prior against the Cardinals, he went where are my numbers at here? Where did it go here? It was like my thing kind of froze up. 4 innings. There we go. 4 innings, 1 hit. And that was easily his best game. So, I mean, you look at his last 4 games. He opened up the month of May, Brandon Sproat, May 6th, where he went 4 innings, just 1 hit, no earned run. Did have 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. But then 3 earned, 3 earned, 3 earned, 5 earned. The last 4 games have been some big-time issues for Brandon Sproat. And Brandon Sproat's got to figure this thing out. Time is now. I mean, like Pat Murphy said after his latest start, we're not rebuilding. And if the Brewers want to make these deep runs and advance through the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Brandon Sproat's got to pitch better. So this is a big night for him to go out there and get the job done. And you look at this Rockies team. You know, the Rockies this year, just kind of bringing up some, it's they're 5th in the National League West, which isn't a big surprise considering the teams that are in the National League West, right? Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Padres, Brewers just got done with the with the Giants and such. So, but you look at kind of what where the Rockies are at, 24-39 on the season. Don't get it, even though it's at their park. The ball may be flying here a little bit. You got to go in there and win this series. You got to go in there and at least take 2 out of 3. You got Feltner on the mound here for the Rockies tonight. He's in 6 games, 2-1 with a 4.85 ERA. He's coming off of a win on the 30th against the Giants where he went 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs. And really when you look at his, and that was his first game since April 23rd. But you look at what he kind of did in his last couple games, including that Giants one. You go back to April 23rd against the Padres. In that game, he went 2 innings, 2 earned runs. Before that, the Dodgers, he went 5 2/3 and held them to 2 earned runs. But then he had 6 earned runs given up against the Padres the day before and such. So it's, you got to jump on him early. And again, I know we say this every single time when we're going up against pitchers, but especially with Brandon Sproat here too. Give him a lead early. Maybe that'll help settle him in and kind of get into that rhythm and focus a little bit. We'll talk more about games 2 and 3, but like I said, we got to take a quick break here and kind of catch up on some breaks. So we'll do that. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Let's go to our friends at Tilden Gun, okay? You can check them out online at tildengun.com or check out their awesome shop located at 12427 90th Avenue in Chippewa Falls. Tilden Gun. I actually will be going over there probably next week to do a little shopping. So if Dad is a hunter and maybe he needs that new deer rifle or maybe a new turkey shotgun, or you don't know what he needs, but you know he needs something, pick up a gift card from our good friends at Tilden Gun. All right, so looking ahead to tomorrow night's game for Brewers Rockies. We previewed a little bit for tonight's game. But going up against, we know Jacob Mizorowski's going. I don't think we need to preview Jacob Mizorowski for this thing, right? Tanner Gordon is going for the Colorado Rockies. And you look at some of the numbers from him. Now, he began the season coming out of the pen for a little long relief innings. But in his last 2 appearances, he has started games for the Colorado Rockies. So far, in 9 games, he is 0-1 with a 6.37 ERA. Little over 35 innings pitched. This is an opportunity here for the Brewers to put up, I think, some. Now, to be fair, when you kind of really look at it, his ERA is, it's up there, but when you kind of really look at it, his last game on the 31st against San Francisco, he started that game. He only went 3 innings because he gave up 4 earned runs. The game prior against the Dodgers, he started that game. He went 5 innings. But only gave up 1 earned run. But in the game before that, too, he went 6 1/3 and gave up 12 hits, 7 earned runs. Then 1, 2, 1, 3, 6, 0. It's kind of all over the place, really, when you look at Tanner Gordon's numbers. So, again, Brewers offense. I don't have any concern about Jacob Misiorowski going into this game, and I don't think a lot of Brewers fans are going to have any concern about Jacob Misiorowski. This is a game where it's like, okay, don't let Tanner Gordon just have kind of a career night. Don't let him go out there and establish his presence with authority like Duke from Bull Durham, right? Go out there and take care of business. Go out there and put up some runs. You know what you're going to get from Jacob Misiorowski. Just go out there and do your thing if you're the offense. And then on Sunday, we've got Shane Drone, which I look at that, and we've seen Shane coming out of the pen quite a bit this year, and he is slated to get this start on Sunday in the series finale. Now, he started a game back on April 8th, and he started on June 1st against the Giants. And in that game, he went 4 innings, 2 earned runs, 1 home run. So you probably know it's going to be a 4-inning game. Others are going to be used, whether it's an Ashby or, we know DL Hall is probably not going to be available. But, there's going to be some bullpen guys in there. But, with the uncertainty of Brandon Sproat continuing to start when guys like Brandon Woodruff come back and maybe Logan Henderson, if Brandon Sproat goes to the pen, is this an opportunity for Shane to kind of start more games and move into that starting role? I mean, he has been, he's another newcomer that I think maybe doesn't get enough attention or credit for the season that he has had. And I think he's come a long way since his first game on April 8th against Boston, where, he went 2 2/3 and gave up 3 earned runs. And he's been pretty darn solid. That's the most he's given up in a performance since. I mean, he gave up 2 back on May 24th against the Dodgers. And then, 2 just against the Giants here. But I think he's kind of been an underrated aspect in this too, or underrated addition. We're so, and rightfully so. We've talked about Kyle Harrison's because of what he has done. We've talked about Brandon Sproat because of maybe what he hasn't done. But Shane Drone has pitched pretty darn solid. And if he goes out there on Sunday and has himself a nice performance, depending on what Brandon Sproat does, maybe you have a little bit of a flip-flop into that. On the flip side, you got Kyle Freeland getting to start for the Rockies on Sunday. He's 1-6 in 10 games, 8.06 ERA. He has started 7 of these games. It has not been a good year for Freeland. He's coming off of a game against the Angels where he gave up 5 earned runs and 5 2/3. The Dodgers back on the 26th, 9 hits, 8 earned runs. Texas on the 20th, 7 hits, 3 earned runs. Sum this all up, Brewers offense, you have an opportunity to put up some crooked numbers in this series. Okay? You have an opportunity to do so. I'm looking at your top 4, top 5, 6 hitters. I'm looking at the Bowers. I'm looking at Terang, Contreras, Yelich, Jackson Chourio, who's hitting well as of late. Andrew Vaughn, maybe this is a chance for him. He's hitting well, but lacking a little bit in home run power. This is an opportunity for those guys, those position players, that lineup, to really put up some runs here. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. Go out there and put up those crooked numbers. You know what you're going to get from Misiorowski more times than not. He's earned that right. Sure, he's going to have some hiccups probably throughout the season. He's going to have some starts. He's going to have some games where it isn't clicking. Every pitcher does. But you go in with every start with Misiorowski assuming that, all right, we know what he's got. It's a little bit of an unknown tonight with Sproat. Maybe a little bit with Drone on Sunday. So the offense, go out there, do your thing. Take advantage of who you're going up against. Take advantage of the altitude that you're going to be playing in. And put up some runs. Make it easy on your pitching staff here. All right? Especially with a little bit of a couple of injuries in the bullpen now. I'd like to get to a spot where you're not taxing the bullpen in any of these games. Put up some big runs in early lates. All right, we got to take our final break as we wrap up the second hour. We're already almost to halftime. Coming up next hour, we'll do a little Pump the Brakes Full Throttle brought to you by AGM Automotive. Since I'm riding solo, I need some Pump the Brakes Full Throttle questions. Hit me up in the chats, on the video stream, or on that Shoe Doctor's bullpen line with a quick text. 715-830-1912. And we got to get to our top 250 countdown coming up a little bit later on. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes.